Welcome to the Dark Ascent podcast, where we enter into the deepest secrets of black magic on the left-hand path. This is episode 13, Tuning Yourself to Demons. To learn more about our work, please visit darkascent.org. Hi everyone, welcome to our podcast. I am as always Melektoth, and I'm here with my wife Elinara.
Hello.
And today we are continuing the theme that we started last week, where we were talking about just allowing yourself to connect with spirits, allowing spirits to start to come to you, but not necessarily being super deliberate about it. We were just really talking about how to open up to the possibility of working with them. But this week I want to get a little more specific and talk about exactly how you would attune yourself to one, how you would start working with one if one has come to you or if you have chosen one, and how that might work. So like I said last week, I do recommend starting with a demon just because it's more proactive and it's, a little bit more of a challenge to work with sort of dark energy rather than, sticking with a light or so on. So I do recommend starting there. So at this point, if you haven't had one appear to you, if you didn't listen to the last week's podcast, by the way, I do recommend it first. So that was episode 12. And it's just, I think that would give you a good introduction to this topic. So if you haven't listened to that, I would recommend doing that first. And you can see the link to that on our website, on the show notes for this episode. But if you haven't yet received any kind of experience yet of a certain demon, then don't rush it for sure. This will just really continue what we discussed last week, the work that we started last week. So, keep doing what you've been doing. I talked about, just sort of putting the intention out there. It usually doesn't take that long, but if you're nervous, then that can block things. Because I know a lot of people are obviously nervous to work with darker energies and beings. So that sort of nervousness can block any kind of experience from happening. So the best thing I can say is just to relax about it and allow it to happen. And in my experience, it almost will overnight or almost immediately, within a few days, sometimes a week or so. It just depends, but it usually does really quickly because they know what your intention is. They've been sort of waiting around. And so the moment you start to open up, they're going to be there. But really, to do what we're going to be doing today, you want to have a specific one in mind, whether you know their name or even just their energy if one's been showing itself to you, or if you have a name of one that you've chosen that you want to work with. That's okay too. If you find one that sort of does the sort of things you want to get into, then that's fine too. Each demon is sort of responsible for a certain, area of life, you could say. So there are some that are good for knowledge, there's some that are good for money, there's some that are good for love and relationships. Very similar to like gods.
They really are gods.
They are.
Right? That are sort of fallen.
Yeah, they are pretty much old gods.
Not fallen, but demonized.
Demonized, yeah, by cultures. And so, if there's an area of life that you want to improve upon, then it can be a really good idea to do some research and find a demon that is responsible for that area of life. And you want to use your intuition here because you don't want to just choose one at random. So you want to find one that you sort of feel an intuitive connection to when you read about them, when you start learning about them and that kind of thing. So don't just, this one does money or that one does relationships. I think I'll work with them. I recommend not doing that so much, but really trying to feel, does this feel like a good choice to me?
And you'll know.
Yeah. You'll definitely know. So, be open both ways, a more passive way of just being open to them and a more active way of actually choosing one and going to work with them and meet them and connect with them. So either one's fine. So, but by this point, you should have a specific one in mind. And biggest thing I want to say today is that what you want to do is basically to tune yourself. That's the name of the episode. to that spirit's energy. Okay, some people will just, grab that demon's sigil, sit down for meditation, meditate on their sigil, focus on their desire, and maybe they'll get something, but 9 times out of 10 they won't.
Yeah, not how you do it.
Okay, and then the wonder, okay, why didn't it work? Well, it's like if someone heard from, let's say, one of your friends or from just randomly that you were good at something, some task, some skill, and they just randomly called you up one day and said, hey, I'm not going to give you anything, and I don't know you, and you don't know me, and you have no reason to care about me or what I want, but hey, would you do this thing for me? And you're going to probably say no.
You mean they'll say no?
No, you're going to say, if someone calls you.
Oh, someone calls you, yeah.
You're going to say no. And so, you wouldn't do that because it's a stranger. It's someone you don't know. It's someone you have no connection with. It's someone that is just calling you up randomly. You're going to say, no, I'm not going to help. Right?
Probably think it's a scam.
Right. So it's a sort of same thing with demons, where if you just say, oh yeah, if you treat this like a game or like just pick a name out of a hat sort of thing, well, Clowneck, for example, is good with money, so I think I'll just choose him and I'll get his sigil and I'll sit down and I'll say, hey Clowneck, I want lots of money, and then I'll go about my life, and then, oh, why didn't he bring me money? Well, because you didn't do anything. You didn't really connect. You didn't really put yourself into it. It doesn't really work that way. So the biggest thing you need to do first is just to tune yourself to their energy. And the best way to go about that, actually there are many best ways, but some things you want to do. You want to start reading about them. You want to start learning who they are. What kind of things they're really good for. It's a little hard to tell the personality because a lot of them are in old grimoires that are fear-based, and so they'll tell you. Don't look at the grimoire. You can just take it with a grain of salt, but learn what kind of things they've been good for in the past. Maybe some symbolisms or correspondences they have. Maybe look up other people's experiences with that spirit or demon. Just do some research on that spirit. And then, that would be more of the practical research phase. I would say optional but recommended. But the really, really important thing to do is just to sit down and meditate on them. Either use their name, if that's all you have, or if you're a visual person, use their sigil. You might want to either print it out or look at it on, your phone screen or computer screen or something, whatever's more comfortable for you. But look at their sigil. Or there's something called an N. Now, an N is actually something I learned about. I never knew about it until like a few months ago. I never really knew what that was. An N is basically a phrase that's not in English that represents, or that, I don't want to say summons, but that calls upon that demon. So sort of an auditory or verbal form of a sigil is how I would sort of think of it. So, if you listen to the introduction of this podcast, I was just gonna say that. You hear Renishthasa, Ubaraka, Biasa, Ikar, Lucifer. The name of the demon is always in the N, so that is obviously the N of Lucifer. And we did that because he's the one that directs a lot of this. So, his sigil is in the logo of Dark Ascent. You'll see the symbol of the triangle with the X and, the sort of hooks at the bottom. That's his sigil. And so, I include his symbol anywhere I can. Or like in this podcast, I included his N. And so that's sort of the same thing. I think one's a visual component and one is a more auditory or verbal component. And obviously I use more of the auditory because I, can't see the sigil.
Oh, come on. You don't want to use Wikki Stix?
Wikki Stix are, thanks for not describing what they are.
I was going to.
Okay, go ahead, you do it.
Wikki Stix are a tactile means of ways that blind people can draw.
Right.
And they're also used in other, not just for blind people, but other people. It's found in like occupational therapist offices and things like that too.
They're pretty cool.
They're like long. I don't know what
they're like sticks. They're sticky stick shaped things that are flexible.
That you can bend and stuff.
Shape in any form you want and kind of draw different things. Anyway, I remember my poor mother. I was, when I was really into astrology.
Oh, I remember this.
And I was also trying to teach Elinara about like the different planets, and each planet has like I wouldn't necessarily call it a sigil. Well, sort of.
You mean each sign?
No, planets too.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. Each planet, each sign, everything has a symbol. You could sort of call it a sigil because every astrological sign and planet has an energy to it. I mean, people evoke Jupiter all the time, or Saturn, or Mars, or Venus, or whatever. And I had never learned them before, but I was sort of trying to teach Elinara these symbols. And so I said to my mother, hey, could you, make these symbols into a tactile form? And so she used the Wikki Stix. So I
wonder where they are now.
We colloquially call them sticky wicks. I don't know how it got to that in my household, but that's kind of what we call them.
They're not called that, though.
But they're sticky wicks.
No, they're Wikki Stix.
They're sticky wicks. And so she did. She took little pieces of paper and put, the Wikki Stix or sticky wicks.
Wikki Stix, I promise you.
Because
that's what Mrs. Brock. That's
I know
what my
technically,
teacher,
but it's just I don't know. My mother butchered the name and it's
your mom butchered it because it's Wikki Stix. I swear.
Yeah, but it's sticky wicks. she put it on little pieces of paper, and then I was able to learn them by feel. Anyway, so that was cool.
I remember using them in math class, and the poor math teacher, and I didn't like her, but she was patient enough to draw this whole everything on Wikki Stix. Or using Wikki Stix.
But anyway. So back to demons. With sigils, I know what Lucifer's sigil looks like because I got his sigil tattooed because I wanted to have that sort of connection with him and he agreed to it. And so as the tattoo was healing, I got to really get a good idea of what it felt like. Because we have this service called IRA that basically they'll help you with anything that needs sighted assistance. And I would call them and say, hey, can you describe this image to me? And they, thank goodness, had no idea what it was. And so they would describe it to me. I'm like, oh, okay, it's like a triangle and it has an X and and it has hooks and a V. And I have this thing in my head that, okay, sort of kind of get it. Well, when I had the tattoo, I really got it. I'm like, oh, that's what it looks like. I had no idea. And so that really helped, like as it was healing, because the skin was sort of raised up in those areas, obviously. And so I guess if you want to know what a sigil looks like, get tattooed.
Yeah, for blind people
listening. People get it tattooed. Not really. Please don't do that for that reason.
I won't. I'm too chicken.
Yeah, Elinara is afraid of needles.
Yes.
And so, but anyway.
It's not that I'm afraid. It's that I don't like to be in pain voluntarily.
You're afraid. So, I
really hate you.
So, sigils, like I will visualize it because I do have some ability to visualize, even though I'm blind. If I really want to connect with his energy, but I'll use his N most often, or any demon's N if I want to connect with them. But anyway, what you want to do is to meditate on their sigil, or on their N, or on both, depending on if you're visual or auditory, what your primary modality is. And if you do that, you'll start to connect with them. Now again, you have to do this from a place of not fearing. You can't be afraid when you're doing this. But, because if you're fearful, then it will color your whole experience.
Although I wasn't really. Nothing happened to me. But
you didn't do it really directly at first. You sort of joined in with my evocations.
Yeah.
At first, so it was more of a passive role that you took,
But still, though.
So it was more that the demon would have to take whatever form I thought, and then you would experience that in your own way.
Yeah, that was probably better, though.
So you want to meditate on the energy of that demon through the sigil or through the N or whatever, because as you do so, you will be attuning yourself or tuning yourself to their energy. And, by doing that, you're coming more into alignment with them. You're learning who they are. It's like when you meet a person and, you know, on the first day you meet them, you don't really know them that well. You don't know what they're like, what their personality is like, what their preferences are, you know, what things they're good at or not, and that kind of thing. You don't really know these things firsthand. But as you get to know them, then you do get to know these things. And even if you don't think you're that good psychically, you know, you can't really hear them or can't really see them, you will know.
Oh, yeah. And because I'm not good psychically.
You will know as you are meditating on these things, the sigil or the N, you'll start to have experiences of them.
And you will sense them.
Yeah, absolutely. You might feel an energy just around you.
Yeah.
You might feel body sensations, you know, not creepy. Like, you have to keep it out of your head, like, oh, this is going to be creepy. No. You know, honestly, just as a brief aside, like, when I was younger, because I'm very sensitive to energies. When I was younger, I used to be really afraid of almost every house I was in, like certain places in the house. Because either I would imagine things, or I think a lot of it was there were certain energies that I was just uncomfortable with. I'm not really sure. It just started, you know, I don't even know how it started. It started in my childhood home, not the first one. My first childhood home burned down. And then we got a second house.
But it was in the same
in
area,
the same
right?
location, yeah. And in that house, I started to be afraid of the bathroom specifically. And especially like the tub for some reason. I just became irrationally afraid. I was never afraid before.
Didn't you watch a horror movie though?
No, that was later on.
Oh, okay.
It just kind of added to my fear. But it was even just the bathroom. Bathroom was always sort of a fearful place. But, you know, it was this fear, like there was something there that I was afraid of. And then some years later, we moved to another house. My mother and I did when I was in high school. And this house was legitimately haunted. I mean, there was a spare bedroom in the house. Everyone was afraid of it. Like my younger cousin, who I think she has some sensitivities, but she's not like into it like I am. She never liked to pass that room, and she would always say, I feel like someone's watching me. And she would run downstairs. This room was upstairs. You'd have to pass it to go to the bathroom.
Of course.
Because it was like the only bathroom in the house was upstairs, and you had to pass the spare bedroom that was totally haunted. And I felt the same thing. And I would like run downstairs as I was like 16 years old and terrified of whatever this thing was. And even when I went off to college and, you know, my mother would be alone in this house, she would say, I feel like something's watching me, you know, and she would not be able to sleep with her back to the door. And so, you know, everyone had experiences based on their sensitivities. And then we moved again to another house that was not haunted, but you know, there were still certain areas, not the same areas, but still certain areas I was a little afraid of. And maybe they're lingering negative energies. I don't know. But the funny thing is that after I started working with demons, all that fear sort of vanished. And like once we moved to this house, just like 2 months ago.
Yeah, January.
It'll be 3 months by the time this recording is out. So about 3 months ago at this point. And, you know, this house, there's no fear whatsoever of any part of it. And despite, you know, I kind of thought, I'm working with these demons, I'm going to feel even creepier in my own home. And the opposite happened. Like, I felt totally safe.
Maybe they're keeping all those...
Probably. And I've heard, you know, I gave that story about Azazel recently. And, you know, probably, I don't know. But... you know, I think I might have mentioned this. I had a psychic some years ago tell me that I had both light and dark beings watching me. Like,
creepy.
Creepy. I'm like, well, at the time, I hope the light beings went out, but the dark ones did. But, you know, like, I feel totally safe, like, in every part of this house, which is, I haven't had that for literally years and years and years.
See, I've never had something like that happen.
Yeah. I've always been super sensitive to energy. I don't know what it is, but with working with demons, like, I feel totally safe. There's never a creepy factor. There's never a spooky, you know, bad things are going to happen vibe or anything. It's not like that. So when you are doing, you know, this meditation, don't fear that you are going to be like possessed, or you're going to have like this breath breathing down the back of your neck, or like any of those tropes. It's not.
It doesn't happen.
No. You might feel sensation, but don't take them as threatening or anything like that. It's just how they're trying to communicate to you, or how you're sensing the energy, how you're receiving the energy. And so, you have to be open to that, but try not to let that fear. And I think for those who are really called to the path of darkness, because certain people definitely are, and for those who are, you probably won't by default. Once you overcome the conditioning, you probably won't feel that fear at all. And you'll be surprised. Once you have a true encounter with a demon, you'll be surprised at how non-threatening it really is. It's sort of like, oh, that's it. Not in a that was disappointing sort of way, but wow, like that was not so bad sort of
Right.
like that was actually kind of cool, or kind of interesting, or intriguing. And that will be more of your experience. So it's really not, they're not out to scare you or anything like that. They have far, far better things to be doing with their time. So that's my experience of them. So try to be open as you're doing this, because like I said, they will, just like anything in life, they'll be colored by your expectations. So try to have no expectations, or positive expectations if you can, and your experience will be far better. So as I said, you want to meditate on their sigil or N or both. And I would just spend a few minutes. I mean, it doesn't have to be super long. You may or may not want to use these. Elinara can't stand this. I don't mind it. Anyway, there's this channel called Satan and Sons that has like a meditation on almost every demon you could think of.
You should probably link to it.
Yeah, I will link to them because they're really good. And I use their one on Lucifer. So it's like, have you ever heard of a mala in Hindu or Indian culture? It's like a set of prayer beads with 108 beads. And so these chants, they're N chants that this channel does, are like that. It's 108 repetitions of the N.
Oh, that's how many they do? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 108, yep. And
is that why?
I'm sure it is.
Huh. I didn't know it was 108 times.
Yeah, it's 100. It says on the description, 108 repetitions of Lucifer's Zen or whoever's Zen. And so I think it's really cool. Elinara didn't like the lady who sang it.
She didn't
or
sing
chanted it, whatever.
Oh, it was horrible.
I liked it.
I'm a musician though, so.
Yeah, when Elinara was a kid, she held her ears because a lady behind them sang badly.
At church.
So she doesn't like bad singing. But I don't think it's bad.
I don't think it's bad singing. It's just the style was just, I don't know.
Yeah.
Weird.
I liked it though. So.
And I have perfect pitch.
Use your own judgment. But I would check it out. It's worth checking out because it really does help. And I also think, and I'm visually impaired, so don't take my word for this, but I believe that they also show the sigil on the video. So it's sort of both. You can look at it and you can hear it. And so it really is sort of a double whammy in that way. You can really get tuned into the energy. And it has like soothing music in the background of the video. So I like them. Check it out. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. You can just do it on your own. But I like them. So that is what I would start doing, and do it for as long as you want to. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 10, 15 minutes. A lot of these videos last between 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how long the N is. So Lucifer's N is a little bit lengthier. It has like 8 words or 9 words or so. So that one's a little bit longer. That one's about 17 minutes. But, I mean, you should be meditating is something I recommend anyway. So it's sort of a good way to kill 2 birds with 1 stone if you don't already meditate. So definitely start doing that. And as you start doing that, like I said, you'll start having experiences either during the meditation or later on, in your waking day-to-day life. So don't worry if nothing happens during it. Just enjoy the experience. But the more sensitive to energy you are, the more you'll feel, oh yeah, the energy's building up. And so, you'll have those sorts of experiences. But if you're not sensitive to energy, then you may not feel that, and that's okay. But almost certainly they will start showing up in your life in different ways that you can sense. So I always say, don't worry if you don't have really strong psychic senses, because they will work around that.
Yeah.
And then as you do these things, your psychic senses will grow anyway. So don't really think that that's any kind of obstacle to you having experience with a demon, because it's really not. So the process of tuning yourself to their energy, it's basically allowing you to start receiving their frequency. So if you imagine a radio is a really good analogy of this, and if there's a certain station that you want to tune into, that station is broadcasting at a certain frequency. And if you want to listen to that station, you have to tune to its frequency, right? And that's sort of what's going on here, where that demon is broadcasting on their frequency, at their vibrational frequency. And by tuning to them, either by researching about them, by thinking about their name, by meditating on their N or sigil, and anything else that comes up for you to do, you are tuning yourself. You're tuning into that station's frequency and starting to receive that signal. So that's a really apt analogy, because all beings, but in particular spiritual beings, are vibrational, are energetic vibrational beings, just as we are too, but we're physical as well. But as you're tuning yourself to them, then they have more freedom to interact in your reality. So here's the reason you want to do this. I'm a big believer, something that Abraham Hicks says, who's like, one of the big law of attraction channelers, if you're not familiar with them. I'm sure you must be. But I had a client once who I referred to Abraham, and they were like, who's Abraham?
You're kidding me.
No. They're like,
you didn't tell me this.
She was like, I thought you were talking about the biblical Abraham. I'm like, no, you don't know Abraham. So they do exist. So if you're one of them, okay. But Abraham there's Lady Esther Hicks who channels Abraham, who's a group of spirits. Anyway, but they're one of the major law of attraction teachers out there. But one of the things they say, and have been really emphasizing lately, is that there's no assertion, there's only attraction. Now, I'm going to talk about this in the near future, because this is a really important magical theory. Because the question is, if there's no assertion, how can I make someone else do something using magic? And because a lot of people want to make someone fall in love with them, want to make an enemy go away, want to, manipulate someone to do something they want them to do. How is that possible if there's no assertion? Like, what's the point of magic if there's no assertion? I believe this and accept 100% that there is no assertion, but how is that possible? So that's going to be a topic of a future podcast. Elinara, remind me, please. I have 3 other podcasts planned, so it may not be for a while.
Maybe you should write it down.
I should write it down. But, this has been a major topic in my mind anyway, so I doubt I'll forget. But there is no assertion. There's only attraction. That's what they say. There's no assertion, only attraction. And so, if that's true, here's the thing I want to tell you. A demon cannot, probably cannot, maybe not, it's hard to, not, doesn't want to, no, cannot assert itself into your reality. That means there are no such things as involuntary possessions, okay? No such things. No matter what movies tell you, no matter what exorcists tell you, no matter what anyone tells you, there is no such thing as involuntary possessions.
Well, even exorcists will tell you it's their choice at first.
Yeah, I have heard that.
It's always their choice.
There's just no such thing as an involuntary possession. Okay, that doesn't happen. And so a demon, cannot just come across you one day and decide to toy with you somehow. Not that they would, but they can't, I think I'll, tear down so-and-so's life and, put everything into chaos just because I'm bored. You're not going to be the plaything of some demon. Okay, that's just not going to happen.
They have better things to do.
They have better things to do, but even if they didn't, they couldn't have that power over you because there is no assertion. Okay, so that is a central magical tenet that I want you to get in your head, that there is no assertion, there's only attraction. That's really important. Because if you don't realize that, you can think all sorts of things are possible that really aren't possible. So that's important. So when you're tuning yourself to this demon, it's doing a few different things. Number one, it's teaching you more about them, because by tuning yourself to them, you are literally receiving their energy signature. And that will be translated in different ways. It may be dreams, it may be things you just experience personally in your subjective reality. It may be things you read or conversations you have that make you realize certain things. But you'll start to receive their energy signature, and that will be translated to you in a way that you can detect and, do something about, or that you can experience. It won't be just, well, because you're not clairvoyant enough, you missed it. No, that's not how it works. So you will detect it. So you're literally receiving their energy signature. And by doing that, you're learning about them and creating a deeper relationship with them. Number two is that by doing this, they're also becoming aware of you. And because you are becoming a match to their energy, they can influence your reality, which you want them to do, presumably, if you're meditating on them, right? So if you're going to work with some demon, you want them to have the power to influence your reality. And so by tuning to them, you're sort of giving them that power, okay? And again, if they're not going to intentionally mess everything up and ruin things for you, because if that's not your intention, they can't act against your intention, because you are the master of your reality.
Right.
But they can follow your intentions. Like, let's say if you want to create more money or a relationship or something, then they can act within those parameters of your intentions to bring those things about, but only if you've really created that relationship.
Right.
By tuning to them.
So are you saying that if I really hated your guts, and maybe, I don't know, maybe you became my ex and I wanted to take revenge and send a demon after you?
Is she planning something?
No. I just didn't want to use other pronouns.
I'm joking. Go ahead.
But you're a much better magician, so it wouldn't work, right? It would probably rebound on me.
Right.
Because that's the no assertion thing.
That's the no assertion. You cannot, and that's why I said curses are pointless. Because you're just sharing in poison, basically, and it may or may not hit them, but you're certainly sharing what you're giving out. So,
yeah.
But certainly if
sometimes you want to curse them.
Certainly if you send a demon after someone else, and I'm not saying they won't. I mean, they have no morality. They will do whatever, but if you do that and the other person is nowhere close to that vibration of revenge or hatred or anything else, you're not going to have any effect on them.
Just like you tried to.
I did try to once.
And it didn't work. Or we didn't know. But from the posts on Facebook, it didn't seem like...
Yeah, I did make an attempt once, and it's kind of before I realized there's not really a point in cursing, and took a more soft approach, which, again, another podcast. I'll be talking about 2 different types of black magic that I've come to learn about. But yeah, if someone else is in a different vibrational place, you cannot affect them. They're just out of your range. It's sort of like if you have someone in your life that you have a relationship, either romantically or work or otherwise, that if they hurt you or annoy you in some way and you want to scream your head off at them, but if they are not a match to being screamed at, you won't get that opportunity, because that you cannot assert your screaming into their reality.
It reminds me of, do you remember... There was a story on the website called, I think it was Not Always Right, or one of those. And there was this person that worked at a store. It was a girl that worked in a store. And she had this condition where nothing anyone said
Yeah,
did
that's
a
right.
thing. Like, I don't know what it was. Like, if maybe their chemicals didn't.
Yeah.
But you could scream at her, yell at her, and
She wouldn't have an emotional reaction.
No emotional reaction whatsoever. So whenever there would be difficult clients, she would be called because he would scream at her, and she would just go, "Sir, blah 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 blah," like
like nothing ever happened.
Nothing flustered, and then the guy would stop.
Yeah, and there have been other stories where someone doesn't react to someone's anger and just reacts calmly, and that person, all the wind is taken out of their sails, and they don't get that chance to express that anger because that person just wasn't a match to anger. So, that it's the same thing in mundane circumstances than as it is magical, where if someone, in your opinion, hurts you and you want to curse them and send a demon after them or whatever, and they're not in that place to receive that, you're powerless. You can't do it. You can't assert yourself into their reality, which is why this will be probably the next podcast that, these two different types of black magic, there's a far better way, and maybe not as fun or maybe not as satisfying in the moment where you just want to pound on them and hurt them in some way, but there's a far better way to deal with these things, and we will talk about that.
I still think cursing is cool.
Yeah.
At least I did. I didn't used to until you got me into it, and now you're like...
I know. I'm very sorry about that.
No, you're not.
Not really. But anyway, so...
Especially when they've worked.
Yeah, they have definitely worked. But just like you can insult someone in a bar, and you can definitely get into a bar fight, and it can feel good in the moment, and then...
Afterwards, it's like...
You go to jail, and then... What do you have?
The end of that.
Certainly,
may as well annoy them by not reacting.
Basically. So, but that's another podcast. So, as you are, tuning yourself to that demon's frequency, then certainly, they will have the power to influence your reality in the ways that you want. Not in ways you don't want, in the ways that you want. So, those are two big reasons that you want to tune yourself to them, because you're receiving their energy to learn more about them, and they are gaining the ability and the power to influence your reality. And so the stronger you make that link, the better. And there are lots of ways of making that link stronger, but the first thing you have to do is to tune yourself to that demon through, research, through meditation, through anything else that comes up for you. And so that is vitally important that you do that. So like I said, you have to put yourself into this process. You can't just, on a shallow level, I want more money. So, it's not a formula where you plug in, variables A, B, and C and get out lots of money. There's nothing in this world, magical or otherwise, that will do that. The law of attraction won't do that. Magic won't do that. Nothing will do that where you just say, okay, well, here's this formula for money. As much as teachers will tell you, here's the missing ingredient to, financial success, and just do this and nothing else. You won't have to do anything else. And that's never true. You have to put yourself into it where you can't just from a distance, hey, demon, go get me lots of cash. And they do that. That almost never works. Unless you're already in that place of like, where you wouldn't even have to call on them anyway, because it was coming to begin with, the money. So that doesn't work. You have to put yourself into the whole experience and really touch that demon on an energetic level. Really come into contact with the real essence of that demon and get to know them and what they're like. And you learn a lot of things about them, whether, they have personality, they have preferences. They aren't just these, they're wise, obviously, but the classical white light sort of interpretation of ascended masters and just, talking about human ascension and I don't know, all these really vague concepts They're not just going to give you wise sounding platitudes. Demons aren't like that. They tend to be very practical. And, they will tell you as it is. And that's how you really know you're in contact with one, because they don't just tell you what you want to hear. They tell you what you need to hear in that moment to make the progress you're wanting to make. Okay, so demons aren't just your yes men that'll just say, yes, everything you're thinking is wonderful, and, and you're going to have everything you want, and you don't have to change anything. And they're going to give very practical advice, and you may not always like what they say, but they will give very practical advice. So that's kind of how they are. So you can really tell when you're in contact with one, because they will tell you things that you maybe did not expect or did not want to hear, perhaps, but that's what they will do. So, now you know how to tune yourself to these demons, and it doesn't take that long. I would spend at least a few days to a week really tuning yourself to them. And that generally should be enough time. And I mean, if you are trying to build a long-term relationship with a demon, then you'll really do it a lot more than that even after you start working with them. You'll do a lot of things to build that link with them. But it starts with this. And, some demons, you will just have one task for them, and that's it. So you might just take a few days and attune yourself to them, and just to build a basic relationship. It's sort of the difference between, a professional, let's say a plumber or electrician or someone you call up once for a task you need done, versus someone that you've known for years that you have a really good working relationship with. Like, we had this contractor guy before we moved.
Oh, I loved him.
And, he was like, he was just sort of all purpose. He would do anything. And we had such a good relationship and rapport with him that it wasn't just like a professional, like, oh, he's just coming out to do this. I mean, he would sit down and Elinara would give him coffee, and, we'd chat for a while, and that's sort of like what it is with demons that you really have a good working relationship with. They sort of more become allies, they become friends, they become protectors. They really look out for you and your highest good, versus someone that you just might call once or twice just for something you really need to get done. So there is a difference there. But, for a demon that you really want to build a long-lasting relationship with, you'll keep doing this. You'll call them regularly. Maybe you'll call on them maybe, once or twice a week or so. Or you'll give them offerings, which we'll talk about another time. And, you'll do things for them that give them of your energy and also help them to have more influence in your reality as well. And so it's a mutually beneficial relationship. And, it's just the process of building that link with them. And we'll talk a lot more about those things. But this is where you get started. This is really where you start to build that relationship. You start to learn who they are and what they're like, what their personality is like. And then you're in a place where you can really start to ask for certain things. So I'm just going to leave you with basically what you might do if you have a certain desire and you want to use this demon to help you to get this desire. So, what you're going to do is not too different from what you've done already, but, we're not going to talk about an all-out evocation that sort of is a little more involved, and that's sort of a topic for another, I don't even know if a podcast, maybe a newsletter, the Circle of Darkness newsletter. But just something that really works, though, is just to look at their sigil, or, again, if you're auditory or, blind, saying their N in a sort of meditative state, and doing the same sort of things you do to tune in, relaxing into it and feeling their energy. And at this point, you should really be able to distinguish their energy. For me, because I've connected with Lucifer so much, like, I can almost anytime sort of relax, tune in, and feel him around me, because we've created that sort of link where he's sort of always there. There's never really a time where he's not there, and obviously I work with some other demons as well, but he's the main one. So as you're looking at the sigil, as you're saying the N, you'll start to feel their energy, and that's good. And especially as you're looking at a sigil like that, you want to wait until you are in a relaxed state of consciousness. And when you're looking at a sigil, something that really proves that is that the lines of the sigil will start to blur for you. They might start to fade altogether. They might start to sort of change shape and become a little wavy. Again, this is coming from secondhand knowledge because I can't do any of this. So, but even for an N, you're going to really keep saying it either out loud or within yourself, preferably out loud. There is power to the spoken word, so preferably out loud. And even with that, you're going to relax into it, get into an altered state of consciousness. Let it be all that your mind is focused on. If you're having random thoughts, you're not quite there yet. You want to get to the point where you're just really, really relaxed in a meditative state and really feeling their energy or just knowing that they're present. Now, if you can absolutely not feel anything, even after you've done this for a week or so, then don't worry about it. They're there. The demon's there for sure. It's just that maybe you're not sensitive enough to pick them up yet. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine. But if you can sense anything, then try to. And something you can do, by the way, is you can light some incense. You can light a candle. Either one of those or both. And it'll be easier for the demon to show itself to you. So incense, the smoke might take on certain shapes to you. And when that happens, you sort of know the demon's present. In a flame, you might see the flame dance a bit more than usual. You might see it dim and then come back, or you might see images in the flame. All of that. Don't doubt anything that happens in these experiences. Like I've said many, many times, everything in your subjective universe is real. Okay? So don't doubt, like, oh, I saw this random symbol or I saw this thing that made no sense. Well, just go with it and believe it. So if you want more visual proof, then use some incense, use a candle, and it might help you to focus more that way too. And it might sort of set the scene where you're not just, sitting in your everyday space, just, meditating on this magical thing. It might help to set the mood where this is something different. This is a more ritualistic thing. This is something that is taking you into a different space altogether. And you don't have to get all mysterious or anything about it. You don't have to wear different clothes or wear a robe or anything. I mean, all that stuff can come later if it needs to. It doesn't even have to ever. I mean, there are lots of people who wear their street clothes and do magic. Like, it doesn't really matter. But whatever needs to happen for you, but, a candle or incense might really help with that. And so as you do that, you'll really start to see them or to feel them or to sense them in some way. And when that happens, just acknowledge, first of all, acknowledge that they're there. And you might thank them, thank you for coming. And just acknowledge that they really are present with you and know that they are really, truly present. It's not some imagination, imagined thing. It's not just a dream or a figment of your fantasy. It's a real force that's present with you that wasn't before. Okay, so it might be weird, but it's true. So once you have acknowledged their presence, once you've thanked them for coming, then you can just focus on your desire. And if you need to do this, kind of get out your fears at first, get out your doubts at first, you can do that. I know people have had success doing that, sort of say, okay, this is what's going on. This is why I'm so frustrated, and kind of get that all out. But then you want to shift into the positive before the end of your, I don't want to call it a ritual, but meditation. You want to get into the positive. So you want to say, this is what I want, and sort of focus on what it feels like to have it. Sort of traditional law of attraction stuff, this is what it feels like, and really get into that. And, I ask you to help me to achieve this desire, and feel confidence. Don't feel desperation. Don't be like, you're my last hope. So you don't want to be desperate like that, but just be confident and know that it's going to happen, and know that You're in contact with a force that can help you. And just realize that it's definitely possible. And if you just end on that sort of positive note, you're so much more likely to get it if you do that. So just, ask the demon for what you want. Say, I ask you to do this. And then you can thank him or her or whatever it is. And that's it. And just send it on its way. It can be very light, very informal. Okay, just even, I've had people have success just looking at a sigil and thinking about their desire, and that's it. So you don't have to put a lot of niceties around it or, anything like that. But it's just to kind of connect with the demon as an individual or as an essence, as a real being, instead of just a way to get my desire. It's just what I like to do. Thank the demon for its time and for being there, and ask it what you want and then send it on its way, And that's how you can get started. And if you do that, you're a lot more likely to have success with all of this. And don't, get discouraged if nothing happens your first time. It may or may not. It depends on your own resistances and that kind of thing. You'll probably see something happen unless you're totally blocked off. But try your best to come out of that meditation and try not even to think about it. Put your mind on other things. Do other things that feel good to you and that kind of thing. And you'll be a lot more likely to have success. But if nothing happens in a week or 2 weeks or so, that's fine. Try it again if you want to. But, just try not to get discouraged if nothing happens right away. It's something you're practicing. It's something you're new at. You're probably not going to be a master at it the first time. But at least give it a week or so before you sort of get discouraged or try again or anything. It's not bad to try again, but you just want to give it some time. You don't want to, inundate the demon with your requests like every single day or something. You just don't want to do that. So, that's the basics of it. And I think it's a really good introduction for what we need. And so I hope that helps you to sort of get a better idea of how you can just start to put a toe into this and start to work with demons a little bit in your own life, in your own workings. This should be pretty easy. None of it's that hard, but you can be surprised and shocked a lot of times at how easy it can really be and how successful it will be for you. I've heard people who say, I haven't gotten results for years, and I just asked the demon for one thing and it just happened. So that can definitely happen, and be open to that. But, just try this out, and I would love to hear about your experiences. And I will be talking about this more deeply in the Circle of Darkness newsletter. I'll be there's all sorts of stuff we can get into. We can get into evocations, we can get into possession, we can get into pacts. Yeah, that's a real thing. It's not like people say it is. It's not selling your soul or something. That'll be another topic, I'm sure. But there's all sorts of stuff we can get into, but this just will serve as a good introduction for now, I think. And there's so much more we can cover. But if you want to check out the Circle of Darkness newsletter to sort of go deeper with this stuff, then you can certainly do so. You can go to darkascent.org/circle, and that's where you can get that. But I would love to hear of your experiences if you try this out. I would really love to hear about what people experience with these things, with these demons, and how it goes for you. So you can see our show notes and leave comments on this episode at darkascent.org/DA013. So we'd certainly love to hear from you, and that would be really awesome. So we thank you for joining us today. We are here every Friday for the Dark Ascent podcast. So please join us next Friday for our next episode. And otherwise, we hope that you have a wonderful week. Thanks so much for joining us.
Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.